Hello, everyone. Jacquie Edwards here. Welcome back and thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to be talking about rent-to-rent insurance. So I get asked about this quite regularly. And we're going to talk about kind of who's responsible for what generally. Now, as with anything in kind of the world of business, it's all negotiable, but I'll tell you some of the basic standards around what's normally done with your rent-to-rent insurance. So for starters, you are now a business owner as a rent-to-renter. So your main responsibilities for insurance are for your business as a whole. So normally with rent-to-rent, you won't be responsible for the insurance on a property by property basis. So the owner of the property, he will be the one that has the insurance on each individual property because he is still the owner. So with residential property, it is just normal and just most common that the property owner has the insurance in their name. Now, that's going to be on the property by property basis. So that will cover him for his public liability. So if any tenants get injured as a part of, living in that property, that will fall under the owner's insurance. It generally covers the structure of the building, fires, kind of major wind damage to the roof, just the general homeowner's insurance policy with a landlord cover as well. So that's normally how it works on a property by property basis. Now, you as a rent-to-renter have to make sure you've told that landlord exactly what you're doing with the property. So if you're turning that property into an HMO or into a shared house, or if you are turning that property into a serviced accommodation, you need to let the landlord know because that will impact their insurance. If you are putting locks on bedroom doors, if you are putting cooking facilities into bedrooms, you need to let the landlord know because that will impact on their insurance. So I like to try to include as much as I can into the contract, or just make sure I've got an email to the owner that just says, this is what we're planning. These are the changes that we're making to your property, just so that they know, and then it's their responsibility to make sure that they've told their insurance company exactly what's happening. You also have to make sure you just take a step back and make sure you aren't giving them any kind of insurance advice. So an insurance broker, this is regulated activity, so you have to be trained to be an insurance broker and give insurance advice. So unless you are a trained insurance broker, you shouldn't be giving that landlord advice. I would recommend that you don't read their insurance policy, because if you read it and say, yeah, that looks fine, and it turns out it wasn't fine, then that landlord could come back to you and say, well, you told me it was all okay. You gave me the advice that was all right. I'm going to sue you now. And then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So again, I've got a clause in my contracts for my rent-to-rent agreements that basically says, Mr. Owner, your insurance is your responsibility. Now that's for each property. Now, again, you as a rent-to-renter are a business owner. So you need to have insurance on your business as a whole. Now, this is normally at a minimum a public liability policy. So again, if somebody gets injured as a result of your business, so it could be a tenant falls down the stairs, they want to sue both you and the landlord. It could be, your handyman gets injured. It could be kind of anything like that. You want to have that public liability policy on your business. So normally what happens is you'll call your insurance broker and you'll say, this is my business, and they will ask you a couple of questions. Normally, the price of your policy is based on what you think your annual turnover or your annual revenue for the year is going to be. So if you're just getting started, you can probably expect to pay maybe £100 a year for your insurance, maybe something like that, because you're going to be able to tell them that you've got quite a low turnover expected, because for your first year, it's going to take you a while to just build it up. So it shouldn't be too much. And then each year you'll renew it and be able to tell them, okay, well, this year we expect to make X, this year we expect to make X. And they'll adjust your premium accordingly every year. So that's your basic public liability policy. There are other insurances that you could consider that will cover your business. So there's professional indemnity, which is really your insurance for giving advice. So this is really common for solicitors and accountants. They'll have their professional indemnity policy that says, all right, if I've given you bad advice and you want to sue me, that policy will cover that. And now, personally, I don't consider that I give my landlords advice, but they might think I've given them advice. And if someday in the future they want to sue me for that, I want to make sure I've got that policy available. Now, that's just me being kind of a bit risk adverse and super cautious. Again, I used to be an accountant, so I'm used to having that professional indemnity policy. So I basically just wanted it in my new business. You'll have to decide what is best for you. So when you speak to your insurance broker, they'll ask you, a lot of questions about your business. You'll be able to tell them all the different things you do. I mean, you might have other businesses mixed into one. You might have other activities that you work on, and they'll be able to suggest what is exactly right for your business, because everybody's business is just a little bit different. Another policy that you should consider is employer liability. Now, this one was a tricky one and surprised me as well. So initially, I used to have a company that I did accounting consulting through. It was a limited company. I was the only director. I had my normal public liability and professional indemnity insurance, and away I went. Well, it turns out when you add a second director to a company, so when my partner joined me and we created our property company, we now had 2 directors in our limited company. Now, I was the only one on PAYE. I was the only one getting paid. He was just kind of like a silent partner, just there to hang out, basically. But what immediately happened there is we became liable for employer liability insurance. So as soon as there's 2 of you, even if you're not paying one of the people, even if one person isn't really involved, you have to have employer liability. Now, you might also be responsible for employer liability depending on how you pay your contractors. So, and again, you'll have to talk to your insurance broker about this to get specific advice for your situation. But depending on how you pay your handyman, who pays for the materials, and how all of that works, they could, for short terms of time, be considered your employee, and then you would need to have that liability insurance available. So again, a good insurance broker will be able to give you the exact advice on what you need. But those are just kind of the top 3 things that you should be looking at in your insurance. Now, there might be other covers that are really going to be helpful for you. I am not an insurance broker, so I'm not like the star expert at this. So this is not insurance advice. This is advice for you to go and talk to your broker about what you need, and they'll be able to give you kind of guidance for your specific situation. Now, the one insurance that you as the renter might want to consider on a property by property basis is like a landlord emergency cover. So if you've agreed with the landlord that you are covering, the electrics and the plumbing and the heating systems, then it could be worth looking at getting a landlord emergency insurance. So this is something like British Gas will do. And they'll basically say, all right, you pay us for this insurance. Normally it's about £30 per property. And anytime you've got a problem with the boiler or if a pipe leaks, you just call British Gas, they come out and fix it. So that's a bit of a way of mitigating your risk if you're saying, I'm responsible for all the maintenance. Those are some of the big maintenance items. By paying £30 a month for insurance, you're kind of covered there. So that's one that you might want to consider on a property by property basis. Another one is your contents insurance. Sorry, a little brain moment there. So your contents insurance. Now, this is for any furnishings that you put into the property. Now, another aside, your tenants will have insurance for their belongings. So when they put their stuff into the property and say the whole place burns down, they would need to claim on their personal insurance for any of their things. So your contents insurance would only cover your contents. So this would be kind of your furniture, maybe any appliances that you put into the property. I don't get contents insurance because it normally does not cover, tenant damage, accidental damage, anything like that, fair wear and tear. It normally will only cover, if the place burns down or if it's burgled or something like that. So for me, that's quite a low risk. And I don't pay for that type of insurance, but you could consider it. So those are really the key considerations. So just a quick recap, the property owner will have the building and landlord insurance on each individual property. You will have insurance on your business, public liability at a minimum, potentially professional indemnity, employer liability. And the other